Hello everyone. Welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so and activate the notification bell. Your support fuels my continued efforts. In our previous episode, we witnessed Feldway's complete awakening as he replaced Michael to become the supreme leader of the angelic forces. From this episode, we will shift our focus to the battle between Milim's forces and the insect army. Let's get started. First, let's take a look at the battle between Esprit and Peliod. It was evident that even though Esprit had reached the level of demon peer, she was still not on par with Peliod. This desperate battle made Esprit voice her complaints. Peliod had set up multiple reflective barriers around herself, capable of reflecting all magic, and even some projectile skills. For Esprit, who used magic as a weapon, Peliod was like her natural enemy. Esprit's attacks were completely ineffective. Even close-range nuclear cannon was effortlessly reflected back. Esprit couldn't even manage to buy some time. Just when Esprit was feeling hopeless, an unexpected helper appeared. It was Phobio. Although we all know how weak Phobio was, his appearance still encouraged Esprit. The three Beastketeers, despite being leaders of the army, were always warriors who never retreat in the face of danger. The situation became a 2-on-1 battle, but Esprit and Phobio were still at a significant disadvantage. Esprit was a diligent learner. Since starting to practice swordsmanship, she had made remarkable progress in a short time through talent, hard work, and guidance from Azura. However, as soon as Esprit's blade struck Peliod, Peliod turned into particles of light and disappeared. Then, Peliod's body began to split, forming multiple entities. Even Esprit couldn't discern which was the real one. This caused anxiety in Esprit. Being unable to identify the real body meant they couldn't deal effective damage. Although Phobio came to assist, his weak strength didn't help much. In the end, as Esprit had anticipated, multiple Peliod entities launched attacks from different directions. Countless scales rained down on them. Esprit and Phobio barely managed to block the attacks with their defensive skills. Without knowing which was the real body, they were essentially waiting for death. Esprit was on the verge of giving up. Unable to win, she thought dying and coming back stronger for revenge might be the only option. But doing so would mean failing Milim-sama and Carrera-sama's expectations, and Esprit couldn't forgive herself for that. This brief hesitation slowed Esprit's actions. Taking advantage of this, Peliod flapped her wings, sending a gust of wind filled with poisonous scales towards Esprit. The scales emitted a beautiful glow, but were toxic enough to corrode the flesh and destroy the spiritual body, making them lethal even for a demon peer like Esprit. Just as the fatal attack was about to land, Phobio kicked Esprit out of the way, narrowly avoiding the deadly blow. Esprit, regaining her composure, immediately apologized. Phobio then threw himself into the battle, repeatedly attacking Peliod's clones with his seemingly ineffective claws. Esprit was puzzled. Phobio's attacks were clearly useless, and he was so much weaker, so why didn't he give up? As a member of the three Beastketeers, Phobio's pride wouldn't allow him to retreat, even in the face of life and death. Though he knew he was weak, he believed that using his mortal body to gather more enemy intelligence, even if it meant helping his comrades, was worthwhile. Perhaps annoyed by these meaningless attacks, Peliod flapped her wings again, creating a vortex of poisonous scales that spiraled like drills toward Phobio. Phobio barely dodged the attack with extreme speed. Esprit's view of Phobio changed dramatically. She had always thought of him as someone who only liked to show off his girlfriend, but now she saw his true courage in battle. Unlike demons who could be resurrected after death, Phobio, as a beast man, would truly die. As a subordinate of primordial Yellow Carrera, Esprit was among the elite of the demon race and had never felt a real sense of crisis since she could be revived after death. Thus, she found the struggles of those with limited lifespans incredibly admirable. Esprit felt a deep sense of guilt. Whenever she faced difficulties, she could always rely on Carrera-sama or push the trouble onto her companion Azura. Until now, Esprit had never had the experience of fighting desperately for something. Compared to Phobio's shining bravery, she felt utterly useless. Esprit's indomitable spirit was reignited by Phobio's determination. She realized that defeating Peliod was impossible. Their only option was to stall for time. Esprit understood the vast difference in their strengths, so she decided to use a small trick to accomplish this task: a demon contract. Phobio's body was already riddled with poisonous scales, and it was only a matter of time before the toxins spread, meaning Phobio's life was nearing its end. Hearing about the demon contract, Phobio smiled, remembering the last time he was deceived by Footman and Tia. All demons fed on souls. To cater to the myriad wishes of humans and other species, demons mastered various types of magic. Phobio was aware of this and didn't hesitate to sign the contract again. This time, his wish was for the power to overcome the current crisis. Esprit responded to Phobio's wish and activated the demon contract. As the contract took effect, a pathway to Phobio's soul opened, allowing Esprit to immediately detach from her physical body and revert to her pure spiritual form, then merge with Phobio's soul. This inherent ability of demons, called possession, is usually used to take over the body of the contract signer. However, this time, it was to fight alongside Phobio. Esprit didn't want to abandon the body she had painstakingly obtained from Rimura-sama, but in this situation, she had no other choice, leaving her physical form lying on the chaotic battlefield. In an instant, Phobio felt everything around him come to a standstill. Esprit explained that she had extended time by over 1,000,000 times through accelerated thought. Phobio truly experienced the world of the strong beings for the first time. Esprit noted that her level was inadequate, as Carrera could accelerate her thoughts up to 100,000,000 times, enabling her to cast spells that normally took years in mere moments. Phobio realized the vast, insurmountable gap between himself and the world's top-tier combatants. Esprit quickly formulated a strategy. Since Phobio excelled in physical attacks, she would lend all her strength to him and use her expertise in magic to counter Peliod's assaults. This combination could potentially increase their survival rate and maximize the time they could hold out. The goal was not to defeat Peliod but to delay her, thus achieving a tactical victory by distracting her and preventing interference in Carrera and Zessa's battle. Despite their combined efforts, their existence points remained below 1,000,000, insignificant compared to Peliod. Phobio was weak, but he knew how to fight like a weakling. With their combined strength, his movements became swifter. Thanks to Esprit's unique skill, Observer, Phobio's soul was safeguarded within Esprit's spiritual body, allowing him to ignore physical injuries. Transformed into his bestialized form, a leopard-headed warrior, he fought with all his might. This collaboration barely allowed them to match Peliod's attacks. Meanwhile, Esprit endured severe damage, feeling pain despite her demon immunity, but she managed to withstand it due to her various resistances. She couldn't help but remark on the insector race, which seemed to be the natural enemy of demons, generally prevailing in battles of equal strength. Enduring immense pain, the duo managed to buy time. After many rounds of grueling combat, Esprit noticed a silver lining. Although Peliod had deflected Carrera's abyss annihilation, she was still significantly weakened, particularly in attack power, though her defense remained solid. Thus, Esprit and Phobio successfully stalled for about 40 minutes. Both were now severely wounded and lying on the ground, unable to move. Esprit, who had taken on Phobio's injuries to protect his soul, barely retained consciousness. Initially expecting to last only 20 minutes, they were satisfied with their endurance. However, their opponent was still energetic, even more so than before, indicating that Carrera's inflicted damage had already healed. The battle was both a victory and a defeat. In any case, Phobio and Esprit had completed their mission. Phobio lamented that he had just gotten a girlfriend only to die now. Esprit teased that this was why Phobio fought so desperately. Through this battle, they had become friends who could confide in each other, awaiting the end together. Esprit asked Phobio to tell her what he wanted to convey to Gabu so she could pass on the message when she revived. Peliod raised her right hand ready to kill the immobilized Phobio in an instant, eagerly anticipating Phobio's scream of agony. A magical beam shot from her fingertips. But suddenly, Gobta emerged from Phobio's shadow and threw him out of harm's way. Phobio was caught by a blue-haired beauty in a red uniform, his girlfriend Gabu. Reinforcements had arrived. Next, Ranga positioned himself protectively in front of Gobta, unleashing apocalypse howling without hesitation, successfully blocking Peliod's pursuit. Esprit returned to her body, stood up joyfully, and praised Gobta, declaring herself a fan of Gobta the Big Four. Gobta became smug and asked Esprit if she would like to go on a date after the war, only to be promptly rejected. Esprit respected Gobta but did not like him romantically. She then withdrew from the battlefield to heal, leaving a dejected Gobta to face Peliod. Switching perspectives to the battle between Sky Queen Frey and Insector Torrin, the intense combat pressure prevented ordinary magens from approaching, leaving them to watch from afar. Torrin excelled in speed, effortlessly evading Frey's initial attacks, causing Frey to adopt a defensive stance. As the battle dragged on, Torrin relaxed his guard, falling into Frey's trap. Frey mocked Torrin, revealing his low battle intelligence. From the start, Frey had anticipated a prolonged fight and worked to minimize her own energy expenditure while increasing Torrin's. She also cleverly used their immense battle aura to annihilate Torrin's troops. Now, Frey stopped hiding her strength and revealed her cunning nature. Realizing his naivety, Torrin angrily charged at Frey. However, everything was within Frey's expectations. Although Torrin's attack methods varied, Frey had discerned that he was still bound by physical laws after their prolonged battle. Cautious and sly, Frey spent a long time confirming this. As Torrin reached Frey's predicted position, he realized too late that Frey's claws had already pierced his chest, clutching his core. Frey then crushed Torrin's core, instantly killing him. Though somewhat fatigued, Frey quickly ordered the battlefield to be cleared and moved to assist other commanders. While Frey was in a dominant position, not everyone else was so fortunate. Switching the perspective to Gabiru, his opponent was Beethop. For Gabiru, whose existence points were only 1.26 million, facing an opponent with 1.7 million existence points was overwhelmingly challenging. Fortunately, Gabiru had a combat partner, Suphia. Faced with their combined offensive, Beethop laughed heartily, feeling even more exhilarated by his numerical disadvantage. Gabu and Sofia desperately pondered how to achieve victory while lamenting their own lack of strength. They realized that Beethop wasn't using his full strength but was toying with them, enjoying the battle. Gabu and Sofia relied on bottle after bottle of complete recovery potions to barely sustain the fight. However, Torrin's death made Beethop tense up, recognizing that in such a balanced battlefield, the collapse of one front would cause an irreversible chain reaction. Beethop instinctively realized that this was no time to play around and needed to secure a swift victory. Beethop changed his previously leisurely combat style, now aiming to eliminate his opponents at all costs to avoid defeat. With a swift kick, Sophia's forearms shattered as she attempted to block, the blow landing heavily on her abdomen. Though she wasn't dead, she was severely injured and rendered incapable of continuing the fight. Gabiru was stunned by Beethop's strength. But what shocked him even more was Beethop's lack of battlefield honor, as he continued to torment the already defenseless Suphia. Beethop stomped on Suphia, accompanied by her painful screams, her heart nearly shattered and on the brink of death. Gabiru understood that Beethop had absolute confidence in defeating him, but with Suphia nearing death, he had to risk everything to save her. Gabiru believed that Rimura-sama would praise his choice, and he released his ultimate gift, Mood Maker, Lord of Psychology. This was a once-a-day power that could change fate. Gabiru wasn't sure if his power could affect others, but it was the only way to save Suphia. Seeing Gabiru praying in the middle of the battle, Beethop mocked his foolishness and seized the opportunity to kick Gabiru. Beethop's alionium-constructed limbs glowed faintly, seemingly signaling the impending end of Gabiru's fate. But that moment never came because Gabiru's prayer worked, and Sophia's injuries were completely healed. In an instant, the recovered Suphia grabbed Gabiru, rolling away from danger. Perhaps because they had temporarily escaped the crisis, the two began to banter with each other, and their mutual rescue drew them closer together. Beethop was perplexed, but Gabiru clearly wasn't going to reveal the answer he wanted. Moreover, Gabiru keenly sensed that Beethop couldn't continuously use the power he had just displayed, which was why he had stopped attacking and joined the conversation. In the underground labyrinth, Gabiru had trained with various strong opponents, so he keenly understood Beethop's abnormalities. Beethop was faster than Epito, had attack power comparable to Geld, and could perform instantaneous acceleration and stops, something even Epito couldn't do. Such unbelievable movements were only possible with magic to break the laws of physics, yet Beethop wasn't using any magic. Observing closely, Gabiru noticed that Beethop underwent rapid regeneration after each powerful move. This meant Beethop was injuring himself to surpass his limits for his attacks. The strategy to counter this was clear: focus on defense and let Beethop wear himself out. However, defending against attacks that could obliterate him in one strike wasn't easy. Gabiru confidently exposed Beethop's strategy, hoping to make him suspicious and change tactics. But Beethop showed no hesitation and continued with his relentless attacks. With Suphia behind him, Gabiru couldn't abandon her and run. Moreover, his vortex spear was thrown earlier when praying and he hadn't had a chance to retrieve it. Beethop gave him no opening to retrieve his weapon. At this crucial moment, Gabiru's 3 loyal followers proved their worth. They, as always, praised their beloved prince and threw the vortex spear back to him. Holding the spear, Gabiru felt it tremble in his hands, as if it had a heartbeat. Moved by the unwavering courage of his followers, tears streamed down Gabiru's face, and he felt a tremendous sense of responsibility. At that moment, Sophia's voice called out, comparing Gabiru's bravery to Carrion Sama's. Gabiru was stunned, his mind going blank, even forgetting the imminent threat of Beethop. He had never received such affection from a woman before. Though some might have had feelings for him, Gabiru's prideful nature made it impossible for him to understand women's hearts. Thus, he remained single. Sophia's praise made Gabiru realize this could be his one chance for love, possibly his last chance to leave a legacy in the face of death. Gathering his courage, Gabiru told Suphia she was beautiful. Amidst the battlefield, Gabiru's voice grew softer, and he couldn't bring himself to say "I love you," but Suphia understood his intentions. She was delighted by Gabiru's compliment. While Gabiru said beautiful, Suphia interpreted it as cute, and her nervous tone reflected this mutual awkwardness, making them quite the pair. Overwhelmed by the confession, Suphia promised to kiss Gabiru if he defeated Beethop. Her words were somewhat incoherent, but Gabiru took them to heart. For him, defeating Beethop for a kiss was a monumental motivation. Gabiru's 3 loyal followers simultaneously started praising Gabiru-sama. Gabiru, however, was already lost in his fantasies. On the other side, Beethop had had enough. Initially, he thought this might be a trap and used the opportunity to heal his damaged body, but the absurd and comical scene unfolding before him was too much. Unable to endure it any longer, he attacked again. However, an even more surprising turn of events occurred. Gabiru, waving his vortex spear in anger, declared this was the most important moment of his life and knocked Beethop away. Beethop was utterly stunned, but Gabiru's attention was entirely on Suphia. With a passionate gaze, he asked if he could really get a kiss if he won. Suphia, realizing what she had said earlier, felt embarrassed but couldn't back down now. She nodded affirmatively. Beethop, thoroughly infuriated by the scene, remained vigilant despite his rage. Meanwhile, Gabiru, excited at the prospect of having a girlfriend, became somewhat careless, creating a stark contrast between the two. Beethop launched his attack silently, his entire body spinning like a drill, concentrating all his power into the poison needle at the tip, unleashing his ultimate move, Spindle Needle Spear. Gabiru met the attack with his vortex spear, and the 2 whirlpools collided. In the end, Beethop fell first, defeated by Gabiru. The battlefield was instantly filled with the cheers of Gabiru's followers, making one wonder if Gabiru's initial struggle had been staged. The secret to his victory lay in the vortex spear. While Gabiru's mind was filled with love hormones, the vortex spear, sensing the crisis, evolved into a mythic-grade weapon. This combined with Gabiru's strength brought his existence points above Beethop's. With their skills being roughly equal, Gabiru naturally emerged victorious. Amidst the cheers and dancing, Gabiru noticed Suphia smiling. Suddenly remembering their earlier promise, Sophia's face turned red, and Gabiru, realizing this, blushed as well. "All right, That's all for this video. Peliod, Zes, and Zijin are the children of Zelenus. Similarly, Torun and Apito are the children of Peliod. Hence, Peliod's strength is formidable. Also, it seems this grand battlefield has turned into a matchmaking ground. It appears the author genuinely wants everyone, except Rimuru, to find a romantic partner by the end of the novel, leaving Rimuru single as fuck. So, what uses immense power if it leaves you single? In our next episode, we will look at the battles of Carrion, Midri, and Geld, as well as Ranga and Gobta's fight against Peliod. Zelenus and Peliod clearly have well thought out strategies for the battlefield's changes. What could their plans be? The next episode promises to be just as exciting. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support is greatly appreciated. See you in the next one.